Well, let's see what's on UXW Bill's repair bench, or repair mess if you want to be brutally honest about it, today. And what have we got here? What we have here is the power supply board out of a Sharp 37-inch flat panel LCD television set. And this poor unfortunate TV set experienced something that is really bad for almost any electronic device. It had a nasty fall off of a rickety shelf. Now somehow, and I don't know to what miracle or God or whatever we can attribute this to, but somehow the screen in the TV didn't break when it fell. Now that's a big sheet of glass, 37 inches measured diagonally, and it's thin glass too. But somehow it didn't break. But something else broke. This is a power supply board, as I mentioned a moment ago. And if you look real carefully here, you can see the crack in the circuit board where the power connector used to be. Now the power cord is supposed to disconnect quickly from this, but if you pull it at an angle, it probably won't. And unfortunately, the only thing that gave it any support whatsoever, there's no support offered by the cabinet of the TV or anything like that, is just this circuit board. And so this broke. Now with that, the other thing that broke were the traces around the board. Now these are nice thick traces. And basically what we've got to do to try and repair this, to see if the rest of the TV is unharmed or if there's other damage lurking in the shadows, we've got to bridge the broken traces. And really the only effective way to do that is to scrape off this insulating material in two places, or wherever you have to in light of the break that you have, and then you can join it with a jumper wire like I've done here. That's probably not the best job of soldering you've seen, because I'm not the best soldering expert in the world, but it's sound and it should stay put. And basically the rest of my fix is going to involve hooking this power connector back up to the two power traces, which fortunately are pretty easy to find here. Here's one right here, and here's another one right there. And I was able to scrape off, with gentle application of a screwdriver, just enough of that material to get the raw copper exposed on this board. And this board so far has taken solder very well. And of course I'm using leaded solder, and the rest of this board's probably lead-free. But leaded solder is what I have, and it's what I know how to use, so it's what I'm going to use. And I don't think there'll be any harm from it. It's not going to directly mix with any of these other solder joints. But basically I'm going to take some jumper wires and connect to the pins on this power plug, and then I'm going to solder it down to those traces. Now one thing I forgot to mention, as far as the board goes, if you've got the missing chunk of board, if something similar has happened to you and you've got the missing chunk of board, you should keep it as a reference to determine which traces you need to jumper and where they need to go. Otherwise, you'll just be shooting in the dark, and with something like a power supply board such as this, it's not a good idea. Now in this case, although it doesn't restore the electrical integrity of the board, what I've done here is I've superglued this chunk of the board back in, so at least it's there and it can provide a guide for how this is supposed to go. And I can also try to use it, to reuse it, to revive it as a support for the power cord, just like it was before. And of course to certainly suggest that the owner put the television on a proper wall mount or on a sturdy shelf that will bear the weight of the set without falling down somehow. Okay, now here's the plug with the wires soldered onto it. And now we just mount the plug back on the board in the holes that it came out of. And we attach the other ends of those wires to here and to here, where the power would have come into the unit originally from those two holes that used to have plug terminals, that used to have receptacle terminals in them, but now have nothing other than a little bit of CA glue in them. You might have to flux these up a bit to help them take solder, and so that's what I just did here. I almost forgot to tell you about it. And here we are now with the traces all jumpered and reconnected to where they ought to be. Now it's time to start thinking about how to put this thing back together. And along with these trace wires, along with these jumper wires, I'm going to try to add some mechanical stability to this thing. It probably won't survive another fall without breaking. At least it won't pull these wires off, hopefully. But this area is kind of weak, and we want to secure these wires so they don't move around inside the set, so they don't cause problems. So I've got my trusty hot glue gun heating up over here, and in a moment I'll secure all this stuff and wrap this thing up and get it ready to put back in the set for our grand trial. There's the finished setup. Everything's back in place now. I've hot glued all the wires down to keep them in place, screwed this thing back into place, put the plug socket back in there the way it came out. And basically what I need to go and do now is get with the owner of this TV. I don't have a TV this fancy, I'll promise you that. It'd be wasted money for me. I really just don't watch a lot of TV, as much as that might surprise some of you. Anyway, the thing to do now is to get the TV that this came out of, put it back in, and have a test run. But I anticipate that it will end up working just fine. There's our patchwork there. Not the world's greatest soldering job, because I'm not the world's greatest soldering god by any definition of the term, or whatever deity you prefer. But I do know enough to get the job done, and of course practice always makes perfect. So next thing I'll do here in a little bit is put this back in the TV and get some footage of that and see how it goes. Hopefully nothing else in the TV was damaged when it fell.
No, I can't get that. Here, let's put them on a better channel than that. I think 18's got the high def. I'll feed that.